Well, it turned out I had a substitute doctor that day. My doctor was out, someone else came in. This guy, however, though, I told him what I was doing before we went through the routine, and he looked at me and he said, "Well, there's a lot of people that say that's how we ate for pretty much the beginning of time."
Gene, how did you find carnivore?
Well, it's maybe not that long of a story. The way it came about was about January of this year. I saw a friend of mine that I only see a couple of times a year, and we were coworkers, but we live in different cities, and we were at a work conference, and he shows up, and this guy's younger than me. He's thinner than me. I never think of him as overweight, and he's a fit guy. But I see this guy, and he's lost like 30 pounds. And I said, "What in the world did you do, Brian?" And he says, "Carnivore, man." And that was the total conversation that we had. We didn't talk about it another time. But I have good enough vocabulary that I know what a carnivore is, and so I planted that in my mind. And on my flight back from this conference, I started thinking, this guy didn't even lose any weight. He looked good, and so as soon as I got home, and I've been fighting weight all my life, since all my adult life, let's just say that. And so I get home and I travel for work. I drive about 1,000 miles a week, going and seeing clients at different places. So I I don't watch. I listen to a lot of YouTube or Rumble videos, things like that. And so this is not the topic that I had been listening to, but it's easy for me to switch. And so I started looking into carnivore, and I think the first thing I put in was something like carnivore and diabetes or something like that because I'm diabetic. Okay, and so I believe the first video I saw was Sten Ekberg, Dr. Ekberg, and he was talking about diabetes medication and what it actually does to lower your blood sugar. And basically, it makes your body store more fat. What I got out of it was it's really not doing you any good other than it is keeping you from blowing out your blood sugar out the top. But you're running, high levels of insulin, and you're storing more and more fat. And that told me, well, no wonder I'm working an uphill battle. I think I'm doing all the right things with my diabetes, but I'm obviously doing an uphill battle with this thing. And that opened my eyes to that. And I probably came across, let's see, I wrote them down just so I wouldn't forget. I probably came across Ken Berry in the Proper Human Diet, but I also came across a lot of, not your videos, but a lot of amateurish videos of people that were just telling their story, that might have been a husband and wife, might have been somebody who just started doing it, and it was my 60-day carnivore, my 90-day carnivore, a year on carnivore, whatever it was. But it was just regular people telling their story. And that had a lot of impact. And somewhere along the line, I came along and started seeing your videos, and they started feeding into my YouTube. And it seems that over the last several months, you've been hitting me pretty regular. That your videos come close to the top just about every time. And so that was in January. I did about 2 weeks of hard study, I guess, if you want to call it that, of watching or listening to videos of these different sorts. And so early February, I decided I'm going to go in and I'm going to do carnivore. And so I decided after watching this stuff that I'm just going to go into it. I know that there's going to be a keto flu situation. It's going to be difficult. I planned it where this was a week that I wasn't traveling much. I was going to be able to be home, wouldn't be far away from the places where I needed to be, and just jumped in and did it. My first week, or let me just go, first 10 days, I lost 10 pounds. And I know that's all junk weight. That's not, I didn't lose fat necessarily, but I lost 10 pounds. That was kind of surprising. But because I'm diabetic, I was taking two medications prior to this. And by the way, I'm not giving medical advice. I'm telling my story about how I did it. So if I highly recommend people talk to their doctor before they do what I'm about to tell you that I did. I knew that I was going to no longer eat any carbohydrates. I told myself I'm not going to cheat on this thing at all. And so with those two medications, I knew that I would just go straight through the floor with my blood sugar. And so one of them is an injection that's a 1 week injection. And I took my last one on a Friday, and I think I started this on a Monday or a Tuesday. And then the other was the metformin that was a daily. And so I stopped that the first day that I went on carnivore. And I was regularly checking my blood sugar. I was a little bit concerned about what would happen. I really didn't know what would happen at that point. So I regularly checked my blood sugar. And the crazy thing was, within 24 hours, my first blood sugar check was about maybe 105 or somewhere in that neighborhood. And I normally don't check there. My normal checks under medication and all that kind of stuff are somewhere between maybe 115 and 130, 140. I never ran high, really high either, because I did do a modified keto, if you want to call it that. I was always trying to be careful and thinking I was doing the right things before I did this. But then right off the bat, blood sugar, and then the next blood sugar checks never went over 100. And I think probably 4 days into it, I hit 70, and that kind of scared me a little bit. And I thought, oh, I'm hypoglycemic, and so. But before I went and grabbed a teaspoon of honey or something like that, I said, let me go look this up. I felt okay. Let me look this up. So when you're trying to get the real information, if you're going to use Google, you have to go about 3 pages deep, and you might actually get the real information. So I went down a ways, and then I started seeing some carnivores talking about normally, if you're in ketosis and your blood sugar's in that range, you're probably okay. Make sure you're not feeling dizzy. Make sure that you're not having any of the other hypo symptoms. And I didn't have any of them, but I just decided I'd take it easy that day and took it easy for the rest of the day. Check, moved back up to 80 or so, and since then, I've had several checks that have been in that range, but mostly I'm 80s, 90s, somewhere like that. So that's how I was introduced to carnivore. It's been working for me extremely well. And then I guess my first numerical check on all of this was I had a doctor visit 2 months in. And so, right at exactly 2 months from when I started, I had my first doctor checkup. And I was expecting that I was going to have good numbers when I went in there. I was expecting to have a difficult time with my doctor as well. Well, it turned out I had a substitute doctor that day. My doctor was out, someone else came in. This guy, however, though, I told him what I was doing before we went through the routine, and he looked at me and he said, well, there's a lot of people that say that's how we ate for pretty much the beginning of time. And I was very surprised that he said that. I asked him to do a couple of different tests, blood tests that Dr. Berry recommended, and so I had him do those tests as well. And then, so my previous A1C was back in November of 23 was a 6.8, and then in April of this year was a 5.8. So I was a tenth of a point above not being diabetic. I was in the pre-diabetes range, and they 5.7 or below is no diabetes. That's with no medication for 60 days. And so I felt that was a win. Whether I lose another pound or not, if I can live in the normal range of blood sugar and not be on medications, that's a win. And so I was very excited that that happened. And then the other, I guess, big changes besides that came up. I wrote them down because there's so many, it's hard to remember them all. Uh, the brain fog that a lot of people talk about. We don't know that we're in brain fog until we leave brain fog. And so that's kind of interesting and kind of exciting that I'm just brighter in general. Uh, the weight loss so far, as of today, I'm minus 40 pounds from when I started. I feel wonderful. Couple of ailments that I had, and I guess I'm working on. So I have psoriasis. I've had psoriasis since I was turned an adult, and I had a severe case of it. Maybe 8 or 9 years ago, I began taking a pretty tough medication. None of the topical stuff ever did anything for my psoriasis. So I've been taking Humira, which is a twice a month medication. It's extremely expensive. My insurance covers it. I have to meet my annual deductible, and 1 month of it meets my annual. I have to pay for it. It's $4,500 annual deductible, and I meet it the first month when I take it. And but since Carnivore, I'm down to taking it about once every 2 months. And so the way that medication works, I've had it long enough that if you drop it, the psoriasis will come back. And so I have really spread my dosages out, and I've got very small pieces or small spots of psoriasis, not very much. And so I guess what I'm seeing for this and what I'm saying from this is that I'm being able to decrease it. And I'm hoping when my body actually gets well, which I'm guessing is going to be a year, year and a half into it, when I get rid of all of the inflammation, that maybe that'll go away. It may not. It's something that runs in my family, but it's going to be greatly reduced, I believe. So I've got that. I didn't know, but most diabetics have this. I had skin tags. I had them on my neck in different places. I had them under my arms. They've just vanished. They're gone. And so I would say that's been in the last month or so that they're just absolutely not even there anymore. My oral health, I went in to have my teeth cleaned a month or so ago, and I was in there for a few minutes, and it didn't take them very long, and the doctor and the hygienist both said we really didn't have much to do in there. So that's good. I have pretty good teeth anyway, as far as cavities and that sort of thing, but there wasn't any scraping or anything. They just brushed me up, and that was it. So that was good. Aches and pains have gone away. I'm 59 years old, and just the soreness and things that tend to happen are gone. I've had like tendons and knee pains and things like that, absolutely gone. And the other one, I do a lot of working out and riding bikes, and we can get into that as a longer story about all this. But after a very long bike ride, I won't be sore at all. And it just surprises me and amazes me that I can do that. And I'm talking like I rode 33 miles this morning on my bike, and I'm fine. I'm not sore, I'm not tired. And in the morning when I wake up, I won't be sore. It's just amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So those are the things that have happened so far. Uh, don't know what else might happen.
Yeah. So, well, congratulations. I mean, and just if you just take one of those things in isolation, I mean, the diabetes, that must be it's such a load off your mind.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm.
So when I found out I was diabetic, that was probably 20 years ago. My grandmother was diabetic, and in her late 70s, early 80s, she went nearly blind. She had glaucoma, and she called it tunnel vision. I don't know what it really was, but I was a teenager at the time. But she went nearly blind, and she had a nephew that had lost his feet and his eyesight from diabetes. And so I knew it was serious, but I still didn't know much about what diabetes really was. And I think I really didn't know until maybe January of this year when I started diving into it. But I thought when I found out I was diabetic, I told myself I'm going to do whatever the doctors tell me to do. I don't want to wind up blind and losing feet and all the things that can happen with diabetes. And so I thought I was doing it right. First time I was diagnosed, the doctor told me, lose weight, here's some medicine. It was probably metformin. I don't remember, but it was probably glucophage, metformin, something like that was my first medication. And so he gave it to me. I started taking it, and I also immediately went on an Atkins diet. I had done Atkins in the past, and so I went on an Atkins diet. I lost some weight. I don't know how much I lost, but I came in 90 days later for my next checkup. I had lost weight, and when I had my blood sugar check, according to my doctor, I didn't even know what A1C was. He didn't explain A1C to me, but he told me, well, according to your new numbers, if I didn't know any better, you're not diabetic. So I had reversed it like I'm doing now, right? Except I was taking some medication. But then he told me, it's good that you've lost weight and it's good that you're, currently not diabetic, but no one stays that way. That was the encouragement I got from my doctor was no one stays that way. So you're going to wind up somewhere down the road falling off the wagon. You need to, watch your blood sugar, stay on this medication, that sort of thing. And so guess what happened? I did exactly what the doctor said was going to happen. I just went ahead and decided I would just treat myself with the medication and not worry about what I was eating so much. So that was my introduction to diabetes 20 years ago.
To get to this point, how have you been eating day to day?
You mean now that I'm on carnivore? Yeah. Okay. So usually in the morning for eating for me is probably noon to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. If I'm home, it's going to be four fried eggs, four strips of bacon. That's my normal breakfast if I'm home. And then in the evening, I guess the preferred is going to be ribeye steak or hamburger. However, there is a underrated beef that I don't hear anyone else talking about, and that is brisket. I love brisket, and I think the reason I don't hear about it is I'm guessing that in most places when people brisket, they put sugar or barbecue sauce or something like that on the brisket as they prepare it. But a Texas brisket doesn't have that on it. It's going to be salt, pepper, maybe some chili powder is what someone would rub their brisket. And so there isn't any sugar. And so I cook mine about 18 hours. And so I'll go find a big brisket. I'll find them on sale. The last one I bought was $1.87 a pound on sale. It's normally like $3.50 or $4 a pound, something like that. And there's a lot of fat on a brisket, so that's not how much food you actually get, but that's what you start with. And so what I do with that brisket is the day that I cook it, I eat till I'm stuffed. So I eat it. Then while it's still warm, I slice it and I have a vacuum sealer. And so I put meal sized portions in my vacuum sealer and I'll make whatever it is, 10, 12, 15 little meal sized portions. Put those in the refrigerator. Since it's been cooked and it's vacuum sealed, it actually lasts for a couple of weeks or so in the refrigerator without any problem. And then I travel, as I told you, and I'm all over the place. So when I leave the house, I'll put a soft-sided cooler. I'll put the refreezable gel packs in there with some water, maybe some electrolyte water, maybe some Topo Chico mineral water, and then I'll put my little brisket envelope. I call it an envelope, and I'll stick that in there. So when I get where I'm going, and if I have a meeting that's going to be around noontime, this is the trick here. About noontime, I'm getting ready to go into my meeting. I'll reach into my cooler, I'll put it on the dashboard of my car in the sun. So then I go in, I have an hour and a half meeting, and so I'll have a fantastic lunch. That'll be my first meal. And so sometimes then if I come home, my second meal of the day will be those eggs, and I'll just do it that way. Or I might have a steak or, a ribeye or something like that. But that's typically how I'm eating. And I'm not really deviating from that. The only minor deviation that makes it more keto than carnivore is around here, Mexican food is ubiquitous. Well, here it's which Mexican food restaurant are we going to go to? That's pretty much the. And so there's one in town that my wife likes to go to, and so there's nothing there that's really carnivore. And so as close as I can get is there's one that they call it a skinny stuffed avocado. So it's a raw avocado cut in half, seed obviously pitted out, and so in the divot where the seed comes from, they put meat, and it could be beef, chicken, pork, whatever. They'll put some sprinkled like feta cheese or some kind of a hard cheese on top. They'll put cilantro on it. I don't want cilantro. I tell them not to put cilantro on it. And then you can top it with queso, which is a cheese dip. That's about the only deviation that I do from all this. And so this is the way I'm going to eat, I guess, until the good Lord takes me home, whenever that is.
Right. Uh, it sounds like you've got it working perfectly. So in the time where you've lost all this weight, you've the diabetes is gone, and all the other improvements, what are people around you? I mean, especially your wife. What are they saying?
This is weird. I think I've seen other people on your show mention this. Now, my wife is encouraging. Well, I'll probably talk about that a little bit. I think people are almost, how do I say it? It's almost like religion, where, it's this whoever it is became on fire for Jesus, and so no one wants to be around him. Uh, and it's kind of like that. It's kind of like they really don't want to ask because they're afraid of what the answer is, I think. And so my kids have seen me lose weight. Actually, my youngest daughter is also on carnivore. She's young, so her weight just went off like nothing. And so she's lost, I guess, I don't know what the numbers are, but I saw her. We went swimming yesterday, and she looks great. And it, she's been on it less than I've been on it, so she's doing well. I have other children that, but they could stand to be on it. That they really won't even talk to me about it, you know. So, and of course, my wife sees the result. I'll give you a little funny story about that. So, my wife, when I first started, I really would like for her to go on as well. She just was a little skeptical, kind of wanted to see me go on it. She's got more ailments than I do. And so it really would be good for her if she did. So then I told her after I started, and knowing that you really can't get too far away from the bathroom, and she's a school teacher, I said, yeah, I would not do this yet. Wait till spring break where you're going to be home for a week. Do not do this. Start going into school. This is not going to be a good idea. And so she asked one of her doctors, she asked her rheumatologist. I didn't know she was going to do this. She said, I'm thinking about going on the carnivore diet. What do you think? And the doctor said, that's highly inflammatory. It's going to make your arthritis worse. Do not do it. These people should get a malpractice lawsuit. This is unbelievable. If you don't know about it, don't say anything.
Yeah. If they don't know anything about nutrition, so they should just keep their mouth shut.
Yeah, absolutely. Or just say, I don't know. I have no clue. But that was the encouragement that my wife got not to do it. She sees how things are going for me, and she's gone on a different route, and she's doing weight medications, and it is she's frankly losing it faster than me. But we've talked about it a little bit. The concern is if you don't retrain yourself on the food addiction, on the carbohydrate addiction, then it's whenever the medication is over, you're right back to where you started from. You have to at some point get over this carbohydrate addiction, or it's going to be long term unsuccessful. But she's doing great now for what she's doing. I love my wife. I want her to be well. I'm not really. It's not the weight loss. I want her to be well and enjoy the benefits of that list of 10 things that I listed off that are going on.
Yeah. Well, I hope she can give it a try at some point because just thinking about the arthritis, uh,
Hmm.
that is just life changing. Getting rid of that,
Right, right. Yeah, and I'm not going to get into all her elements, but there's a list uh, that she would really benefit. It would change her life.
You kind of indicated that like this is it for you. This is the way you're going to eat going
Hmm.
forward.
Yeah.
Um, for someone who's kind of watching this and thinking, okay, this I've never heard of this before, sounds a bit crazy, but I might like to give it a try. In your experience, what was the most difficult thing for you getting started? Did you have cravings at all?
Well, I guess I had cravings in that first 3 or 4 or 5 days. I definitely was a carbohydrate addict. I was not doing cakes and pies and donuts and that sort of thing. But and that was one of those things that fooled me about how I really was going, was because I was telling myself I'm not eating that stuff, but I was eating in this part of the world tortillas, tortilla chips, crackers, those kinds of things. But since I wasn't eating cakes and pies and ice cream and that sort of thing, I thought I was doing the right thing. And so I did notice early on just the habitual things that I would do, that I had to kind of stop myself from. And now, and so that, as a lot of your guests have said, that goes away pretty quickly. Once you get into ketosis, that you don't have at least the physical desire to eat those things. Uh, but I do notice when we go to a Mexican food restaurant, here they bring you out a basket of tortilla chips, and they bring you 2 or 3 different flavored salsas, and that's just kind of free. That they put that on the table when they put your drinks down on the table. And so typically I would eat, maybe a half a basket to a basket of chips with as much salsa as I could possibly put on the chips, and that's kind of normal. And so going to a Mexican food restaurant and sitting there and watching everyone else eat those chips, it's more of a physical, I want to reach and grab one than it is the desire to eat it. And so that lingers a little bit, but even that has gone away for me. I would say in the last 3 or 4 months, I'm perfectly fine to sit there and watch everybody else eat all that, and I'll just wait until my meal comes.
The interesting thing about that kind of situation is I think once you go carnivore, you get to a point where when you're over the cravings, and any feeling you have is just some kind of
Hmm.
psychological or
Hmm.
habitual thing. But you really get to the point where you can appreciate the social aspect of going
Right,
out for dinner with people rather than the it's got to include food.
right, right. And I don't feel isolated in that way. Uh, I do find it interesting though that when you place an order at a restaurant and it's so out of the norm from what they're used to, it's almost like they can't stand to actually fill the order the way you asked. And that happens. There's a hamburger restaurant in town, And I used to order it kind of strange anyway. I would order a lettuce wrapped hamburger, and that already blew their mind. So I was eating keto ish all this time, and so that always blew their mind. And so now I go in and they have a thing they call brisket burger, and so it's a hamburger patty with some a slice of cheese, bacon, and brisket beef on top of that, in a bun. And so I'll tell them, I I don't want any of the veggies. I just want the meat. Just bring me the meat. I don't want anything else. And so they write it all down, and I'll tell them, and you can even go get the fatty brisket and put the fatty, moist brisket on top of that if you want to. I'm totally happy with that. So they'll bring it to me. It'll have some onions. It'll have some lettuce on the side. It'll be on the side. It'll have a coleslaw. It'll have a little cup of a barbecue sauce. They just cannot stand to fill the order the way I ask, and so I just laugh at myself when they do it. And it happens at every restaurant. Every time I place an order like that, it never comes as just the way I asked for it. It seems
Yeah,
simple.
I think it's almost as if sometimes they feel like if we don't put it on the plate, maybe he's going to come and ask us for a discount later.
I don't know what it is, but this one restaurant, I've been eating there once a week for I don't know how many years, and you would think that they know I'm not going to stiff them, or I've never asked for a discount, and I tip them fairly well. I don't know what the deal is.
Yeah, yeah. So, what would your advice be to someone who is thinking about getting started with carnivore?
Well, I would say you really need to look deep inside and understand why you're getting into it. What's motivating you? What are the ailments that you would like to see get better? But I would also say before you get into it, don't just have listened to Gene and Dave one time. You need to really get into understanding how this thing works. You don't need to be a doctor. You don't need to, or a PhD biochemist, but you need to have some basic understanding of really why it is that you're doing it and then why it works for you and why it should work. And that this is the way that people have been eating since the beginning of time, and to really internalize that, because so many people are going to try to talk you out of it, out of ignorance, not because they're, I don't know, it's just ignorance is about the best way I can say it. And so people are going to try to talk you out of it. They don't understand it. You can't order at a restaurant normally. There's just a lot of things that are going to go on that you have to have gotten yourself armed and ready to be able to take this on. And then once you're in it, you get the routine going, then it's going to work. The other advice is going to be, if you're going to jump in with both feet the way I did it and you're not going to ease into it, you need to make sure that you clear out about a week that you're going to be not stranded somewhere and in a bad situation. That's my biggest advice.
Yeah, good advice. So, how do you respond to the claim that carnivore is restrictive?
Uh, well, it's kind of an interesting thought process, but sometimes restricting is also freeing, because that little joke about what restaurant are we going to go to, honey. Uh, Sometimes it's one of those mental tasks that you're going through. What are we going to prepare for dinner? We go to the grocery store. We're going to get this. We're going to get that. We're going to get the other thing. My grocery list is easy. My wife just asked me earlier. I'm going to make a grocery order. What do you need? I need about 3 dozen eggs and a big package of bacon. That's all I need. I don't need anything else. What else is there, right? And then I told her, I said, we made a brisket last week. I said, I got enough brisket for another week. I'm fine. And she said, well, do you get bored eating, the same thing? No, it tastes fantastic. I'm not bored at all. So it's not restricting, it's freeing. And especially when you feel great, you're losing weight, all of these other things are going away. I just, it's like, what a small price. It's not even a price to pay, but if it was a price to pay, what a small price to pay. I did have a couple of things that I wanted to bring up. They're kind of small, or not small, but I think important. So we talked about some of the things where it's things that apply to me, but there's a couple of things that I would like to see more of on your channel and others. And one of them is I've got a friend that uh, that I care about deeply. That we're kind of estranged at the moment for some other silly reason, but nonetheless, I found out that he had Alzheimer's, and I have seen a lot of talk about how eating this way has helped people really gain some relief from Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia. And I would like to see more people talking about that. I know there's like no studies on it or anything like that, but I would like to see more about that from people. It's not my thing, but I know that's a big deal. And if that can give anyone relief, and the other one, I know it's part of your story, but I have family members that alcohol is an issue, and alcohol is not an issue for me personally. And I feel like you asked earlier about friends and family. I feel like for me to bring up this is going to help you with that when that's just not something that's been a problem for me. It's not going to translate as well, and I would like to see more people. Oh, you were brave to open up about it, and more people to open up and talk about how eating this way has helped to alleviate those cravings and to make that an easier process. And so those are the things that I would like to see from your guest and from others in the future as well. So I just wanted to make sure that we talked about that.
So, Gene, is there any way of people reaching out to you? Do you have any social media?
I don't really have social media. In the job that I'm in, we can't have social media, but I do have email, and I would be willing to speak with anyone if they had questions or just something that was relatable to this topic. Uh, they can feel free to email me, and I'll do my best to respond to it.
No worries. I'll include your email in the show notes. Gene, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I really appreciate your time.
Well, thanks for having me, Dave. I appreciate it.